Everybody knows that the most deadly weapon in America's arsenal is a Marine and their rifle. Well, guess what? Now we're giving them drones. In April of 2026, the United States Marine Corps invited me to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, to view a Neros Archer one-way attack drone armed with a Kraken, kinetic electronic arming and safe device, as well as a payload in action. I got to tell you, I am so proud of these Marines and how far they've come in a year's worth of work. They took an idea from a concept to a genuine, honest-to-God, bad guy killing weapon system, and less time I've seen parts come in from back order in the U.S. Army. And you know, the United States Marine Corps has always been an innovative branch because they have to fight far from direct support. And they've created this culture of uniqueness and innovation. I mean, the Marine Corps was the first branch to use close air support. They're the first branch to try dive bombing during World War II. And they refined close air support during operations in Central and South America. They also invented vertical envelopment, medical evacuation through helicopters flying off ships. They were the first branch to truly test robots, although this particular one didn't work out. So, is it any surprise that the Marine Corps looked at first-person view drones used in Ukraine and said, how can this make us more efficient and effective killers? And you know, the Secretary of War has made lethality a major component of his defense strategy. If what we are doing does not make the military more efficient and effective killers, maybe we shouldn't be doing that thing. And the Marine Corps has taken that theory to heart. You know, I've often said that one of my big fears is that we're going to take the wrong lessons away from Ukraine. And if you want to stay up to date on Ukraine, you need ground news. Here's a great example of how I use ground news. I type in the topic of drones and I see a story on the latest drone attack against Moscow. Scroll down a little bit more, I get to see how the news is being covered on both the left and the right. Scroll down even more and I can see each individual article and how the news is being covered. Ground news gives me the ownership data, average factuality rating, and bias of the publication. So I know who's telling me what to think. The most important feature is this blind spot report up here. It shows you what you may have been missing due to your own political biases. For example, show that the Florida Attorney General is investigating Major League Baseball because they punished players who are wearing biblical verses on their hats during Pride Night. Zero outlets on the left covered that. Or did you know that a tarp was thrown over the Kennedy Center's masthead after President Trump's name was removed? Well, that was barely covered at all on the right. I actually pay for ground news. They don't give it to me for free. I even got a subscription for my dad because he's retired and he stays home all day watching cable news. He's really misinformed. So click the link in the description below. Go to ground.news/Ryan. Get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is the same plan I got for me and my dad, and get the whole side of every story. One-way attack drones are all over Ukraine. And the main reason is that neither side could gain air superiority. And Ukraine essentially ran out of artillery ammunition early in the conflict. So I don't necessarily view Ukraine as a template for future conflict. I think drones are going to be important in the future, but I don't necessarily see them being used in the same cadence that we see in Ukraine. However, I could certainly see first-person view drones being used in very specific cases. I mean, for example, the Army has a new rifle called the M7, which can reach out and engage targets at 800 meters with this new 6.8 millimeter cartridge. But all of the increased lethality of that round has created a reduced capacity, so you can carry less ammunition. So in a case where you're engaging a target out to 800 meters, why don't you just use a drone? Right? So that's kind of the theory behind the Neros Archer here. Instead of waiting for the perfect weapon 5 years from now, let's build one that's 80% of the way there today. This program started just after Christmas in January 2025. By February, the Marine Corps had settled on a drone, the Neros Archer, primarily because it was the first National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA-compliant first-person view drone. The Marines figured that, hey, if this thing is NDAA compliant, it would make it easier to find ways to arm it. And this assessment was 100% correct. This is a low-cost first-person view drone built with mass production in mind. The drone itself costs $2,000, has a range of 20 kilometers, which is actually pretty impressive. I mean, when you think about it, you are now giving a Marine Corps company, maybe even a platoon, maybe even a squad, the kind of long-range precision fires that were once only available at the brigade level, reaching out 21 kilometers. And you add on to this a weapon system, it puts another $3,000 onto the cost of the platform, but it gives you a lot of capability. Now, this thing is kind of a mix and match. So the weapon itself is this disc. And there's two types of directional anti-personnel warheads, which kind of turn the drone into a flying claymore mine. If you're out fighting anti-armor targets, or if you're out fighting armor targets, you need anti-armor.
Strike that. Reverse it.
You have this shape charge warhead that uses an explosively formed penetrator, or EFP, which is basically an upside down copper bowl that can punch through armor. Now, here's where things get interesting, and also kind of explains how the Marine Corps developed this weapon so fast. Every munition has something called a DODIC number, the Department of Defense Identification Code, DODIC. For example, a 9mm cartridge is identified as A360. A javelin missile is PL53. But getting that DODIC number, that requires like extensive technical evaluations of the munition, and you have to find a manufacturer for the munition. So what if we took some C4 plastic explosives, DODIC number M023, and a standard electronic blasting cap, DODIC number M130, and just kind of made our own munition? So we take the C4 and we stuff it into an enclosure. Then we put a blasting cap through the back. Then on the munition, we screw on in either an anti-personnel or an anti-armor disc on the front. Now this thing can be whatever it needs to be on demand. Since the warhead and its fragmentation plate contain no energetics, no actual explosives, it doesn't need a DODIC number. And you already have plenty of C4 and blasting caps across U.S. military in our inventory. It's not like you have to relearn how to handle a new kind of explosive. And I really want to emphasize how revolutionary this is. Instead of waiting for the perfect weapon 5 years from now, the Marine Corps created something that could be used today with 80% of the capability of an engineered munition. Now, there are some disadvantages to the Neros Archer. The camera system's it's optimized for daytime only, although it can be modified for operator level night use, even if it's not really optimized for it. But that keeps the costs down. It also has an analog camera and a control system instead of a digital control system. And that's why these two antennas are on the front. Digital control systems and camera systems are great, but analog is a little more resistant to jamming and kind of degrades over time rather than that instant cutoff you see in digital systems when they are jammed. This attack drone is also one way. While there is no way to take the explosives out of the drone once it's launched, the pilot can change the status of the drone between enabled and armed state, similar to how like a rifle has condition codes, right? Like flipping the safety on and off on a rifle. But ultimately, there is no way of taking the energetics out of this drone once it's launched. And the weapon system is relatively cheap, so the Marines have decided it's not worth the risk to bring it back once it's launched. So once the troops fire this thing, they always have a ditch area selected. That way they can self-destruct the drone away from friendly troops. Now, one other interesting thing about the system is that the Marine Corps is still experimenting with how it should be employed. Like, is this a squad weapon? Is it a platoon level asset? Is it a company level asset? Is it all three? Yeah, and they've figured out the drone team's size, at least in standard training or operational employment situations. That's a team of 4. 2 payload specialists who load the explosives on the drone and set the drone up prior to launch, and 1 drone pilot and 1 team leader. And they assist in like navigation and ensuring proper target selection. So much like any other weapon system, the Marines have highlighted that the Archer system can be employed by 1 or 2 Marines in extreme combat condition. And the Marines haven't decided yet if they're going to use a specific MOS or job code for the pilots. Typically, smaller drones in the Marines, like the Stalker, have been flown by 7316 SAUS operators. And the service already has more Archer pilots than it does 7316s, though. For the payload specialists who pack the C4 and the blasting cap, the Marine Corps doesn't just give them a classroom brief and tell them, okay, go load it. Like, they enforce this strict crawl, walk, run methodology. These guys have to have eight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 successful rehearsals with 0 procedural errors before they're even allowed to touch a live kinetic warhead. So how do the Marine Corps actually fire the drone? Well, typically they have some sort of ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance asset, spot the target. It could be a stalker unmanned system. It could be a team of Marines on the ground. Next, an attack drone 5-line request is sent up to the FSCC, or Fire Support Coordination Center. This would normally be at the company, battalion, or perhaps the MU level, but they're still working that out. It's going to depend on the operational scenario. And that 5-line request consists of the observer ID, their location, the target description, and any restrictions such as obstacles that might be near the target, as well as a suggested approach. The payload specialist will prep the drone, call back to the launch crew that they're ready to launch. Now, in this case that I actually witnessed, the targets are 2 simulated tank targets. The targets are identified, 2 drones are launched. Now, at this point, a drone enters a holding pattern as it waits for the second drone to launch. This is important so both can strike their targets simultaneously. Once the second drone is in the air and at their hold site, they proceed to the target. Now, this might seem like a very simple exercise, but one of the biggest issues with issuing these drones out to Marines is the way we classify drones. For the purpose of fire support deconfliction, the military doesn't consider a one-way attack drone to be any different than an F-18. Primarily because Marines are so focused on combined arms and integration, they need to enable friendly units to close in on enemy positions. So deconfliction is super duper important. Excelling in combined arms requires detailed coordination, especially when striving to deliver explosive effects on the enemy as friendly units maneuver as closely as possible, or what Marines call minimum safe distance from friendly weapons effects. So the Marines are striving to figure out how to expedite this deconfliction as rapidly as possible. They anticipate that they'll be able to do more of this as attack drones scale across the service, as people get used to using these things. With this, I also anticipate that the service is going to increasingly embrace a mindset that pushes the Marine Air Ground Task Force concept down to the infantry company level. So when you think about it, these drones are instant Marine close air support, right? They practiced that for years. Yeah, and that might be the most important part of this story. Not really the drone, but the mindset change that the Marine Corps can take a product from concept to actual deployment scale in less than a year and accept a solution that gets 80% of the job done this afternoon versus waiting years for a perfect solution. Again, I am so proud of these Marines and what I saw at Camp Lejeune. Special thanks to Colonel Scott Cuomo of Weapons Training Battalion Quantico, as well as Chief Warrant Officer 5 Stephen Pearsall and Gunnery Sergeant Matt Lonergan. Without you guys, this video would not have been possible. Also, special thanks to 2nd Marine Division for inviting me to their post and showing such hospitality. You want to support the channel? Grab my This Meeting Could Have Been signature from Bunker Branding. I also have a Substack. You can toss me $5 there. It really helps me out when I visit all of these places to get footage. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Oh man, I have to work in this skiff. Maybe I'll just take my phone in this skiff. Hey kid, what's going on? Think tank! Taking a phone into the skiff isn't cool. It could really hurt your friends. But a t-shirt or hoodie from Bunker Branding sure is cool. Wow! This meeting could have been signals intelligence. That's like every meeting. And Bunker Branding has all sorts of other merchandise.
Intel Life, Air Assault, Live, Laugh, Launch for Destroyer, Trident, HIMARS, and Patriot. Think outside the bomb. Drone Suite Drone, Department of the Boat People, landmines, and even the tow missile. It would behoove you to grab one today.
I don't think you can smoke in here.
Oh, I'm not smoking. I'm just holding a lit cigarette in my mouth.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.